Hey everybody, welcome to Stacks and Stats. I'm your boy Sangeeth, and today I just wanted to discuss with you guys if it is still a good time to jump into precious metals, specifically gold and silver, with them being at all-time highs. And to give you my clear, concise answer to that question, it is going to be a resounding and stout no. It is not too late to jump into the precious metals market. In fact, I think we are still very early for these precious metals to see their true value to be recognized. Now, I kind of want to just discuss a little bit about why I feel this, and it's not just a gut feeling that I have. It's pretty much just based off of like the fact that gold and silver have been used by societies, by civilizations for over 5,000 years, by civilizations that had no contact with each other, from the Western Hemisphere to the Eastern Hemisphere, from 3000 BCE to 1000 AD, from the Romans to the Greeks to the Indus Valley to the Aztecs. These people have used gold and silver as some unit of wealth. And even if you take a look at the Western Hemisphere, right? North Americans have been using, like our currency even 100 years ago was backed by some level of gold and silver, okay? In fact, 100 years ago, about 30% of the entire world's GDP, the entire world's wealth was allocated to gold and silver, 30%, okay? And now if you compare that to what's going on today in 2026, you have less than 1% of the entire global wealth allocation. Less than 1% is towards gold and silver. So that's a good indication that with something that has a 5,000 year track record, that in the past 100 years, we as a society have deviated away from gold and silver. Now, there's this argument to be made, we are not the ancient Greeks, we are not the ancient Aztecs, we're not even the same society we were 100 years ago. So what is this shiny rock gonna do in my vault or under my mattress? And how, it's not generating any wealth for me. So what is the point? I mean, we live in a society of airplanes and AI and man on the moon and all these things. So what exactly would I do with gold and silver? And that is a fair argument to be made. Now, what I would say to people that pose that argument to be, that think that, precious metals don't have a place in the modern world, well, I would tell you to tell that to the people of Greece in 2014 when the banks locked them out of their safety deposit boxes and their accounts. I would want you to tell that to the people of Lebanon in 2021 where they experienced crazy hyperinflation to the point where their money just became worthless. And I would also want you to tell that to the people of Iran right now where their currency has been devalued by over 80%. Now, these are, mind you, these are not countries these aren't Western first world countries. I would argue Greece kind of is, but, at the end of the day, these are modern day economies where these things are happening. And when you look at the fact that the reserve currency, which is the US dollar, is, in my opinion, one of the most underreported stories of the past few years is we're facing pretty much a $40 trillion sovereign debt crisis. And that's just the immediate debt. If you factor in everything else, it's actually a lot bigger than that. But you're looking at $40 trillion in debt by the summer of 2026. With all that being said, at the end of the day, I believe that us as a society, we are all human. It doesn't matter if we can land man on the moon. It doesn't matter if we have AI and satellites and all this stuff. At the end of the day, we're human by nature. We are always going to have a ruling class / the government, and we are always going to have war. It's just inevitable. And I think that we are knocking on the door of something like that within the next 5 years, which is why I believe that gold and silver again are just starting their run up. Now, if you take a look at this chart here, the precious metals in the 1970s, okay? You can take a look, we'll take a look at gold here to be specific. The 1970s is a good example because there was a lot of turmoil going on, especially with the oil crisis. And you could see here that in a 10-year period, gold went from $35 US to $850 US. So from 1970 to 1979, in 9 years, you had gold going from $35 US to $850 US, which is insane. Now, when we're talking about gold and silver, I know they're both grouped into the same category because they are both precious metals, but I want you guys to understand that these are two completely separate markets, like night and day. When you're talking about, like, say, for example, gold, we'll use gold as an example. So gold's market, there's a reason why the reasons why the price of gold has shot up ever since 2022, I would say, is completely different from the reason why silver is going up. Now, a lot of people say gold has gone up because of inflation, because of COVID, because there was some crazy money printing done by governments all over the world. And a lot of people saw that gold would be a way to protect their wealth so that their money would not become devalued and dissolved, I guess. And I want to kind of tell you guys that that's not entirely true. I mean, that may partially be it, but that's not entirely true. Now, like, we'll say, for example, like the pandemic started in 2020, okay? More or less. And banks all over the world, they kind of went about dealing with the economic fallout from the pandemic the same way. They went from dropping rates to almost zero, and they resorted to crazy money printing to keep the economy alive. Now, you didn't have to be an economist. You don't have to be an investor. You don't have to be somebody that's plugged into the financial community to know that this is going to result in crazy inflation. In fact, even a regular blue-collar guy like me knew or had some inkling that this was going to happen. In fact, that's when I first started stacking. And this is one of my first rounds I ever got. It's actually a silver round, and it says, "Inflation is coming." And it's a three-headed dragon. I think it's got like Biden and Kamala Harris and whatever. I mean, I'm not getting political with this. It's just that this round was one of the first rounds I bought, and this was in 2021. Okay. And when you take a look at the price chart for gold, which I'll pull up here, and if you take a look at that price chart, you'll notice that even though people knew this was going to happen, people knew that there was going to be crazy money printing, the price of gold stayed relatively, it just kind of meandered. It just kind of stayed where it was at. You didn't see any sharp jumps or declines or anything like that. So I started to wonder, like, why is that? What exactly started this run up in gold? Now, what you'll notice is in 2022, a full 2 years after the pandemic had happened, and a good while after all this crazy money printing was happening. In fact, it was kind of in the middle of all this money printing, gold shot up. And one big reason why that happened is because the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. Now, I want to show you why this was a bigger deal financially, economically, than most people may think. Now, the reason the reason why this is bad is because, having a country invade another country, yeah, it sucks. But I mean, at the end of the day, it happens all the time. Whether we like it or not, it's what the U.S. did in response to that is what caused gold and silver prices, specifically gold, to rise up. Now, the prices for gold went up because of central bank buying. Okay. Now, the reason why the central banks decided to, actively purchase and increase their purchases in gold after the invasion of Ukraine was not so much because they didn't believe in the value of the US dollar anymore. It was more so the weaponization of the US dollar. Okay. Now, what the US did is they froze $300 billion worth of Russian assets, $300 billion worth of US treasuries. Okay, now that's $300 billion worth of U.S. debt that the Russians owe, that the U.S. rightfully owes them interest and has to pay them back on. Now, this was seen within the international community as a big no-no, because you may disagree with someone in terms of what they do. And again, whichever side you tend to land on, whether it's Ukraine or Russia, both sides feel like they were right in doing what they did. Now, just because you disagree with someone does not mean that you can essentially take their money from them. And that's what the US did. Now, when you take a look at other global players, right? You take a look at India, you take a look at China, you take a look at other countries that may or may not have conflicts with the US in the future. I'm going to use China as a really good example. China has had its eyes on Taiwan for for decades, okay? And China happens to be the biggest holder of US debt. Technically, it's Japan, but if you count the Hong Kong market with China, China actually owns the most. Now, what's China going to do? If they see that the Russians had their US treasuries seized, or I guess they're just the US chose to default on them, the Chinese are going to look at that and be like, you know what? This almost $1 trillion worth of US treasuries that I own, if I made a move that upset the US, well, what are the odds that they're going to pay me back? What if they seize these treasuries as well? So that's why China essentially started slowly liquidating, slowly dumping their US treasuries, and they chose to buy gold. And they bought gold because, you can't really sanction gold. You can't really seize gold. You have to physically go in there and take it from them. And gold doesn't have any opinions. Gold is just there, right? And that's the reason why the Chinese started aggressively buying more gold while slowly liquidating US treasuries without trying to cause too much suspicion. And they've been doing this since 2013, and they've been accelerating after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So this is pretty much the main reason why the price of gold started running up. I mean, it's been making the headlines a little bit here and there, but I mean, the average person out there, they don't really own gold. So I asked myself this question, like, why is the price skyrocketing? And yeah, gold can't be frozen. Gold can't be seized. I mean, it can be physically seized, but it can't be electronically seized. Can't be weaponized. So that's why. That's pretty much the main reason why the central banks are picking up all the gold that they're buying. And the cool thing is, even with prices being at what they are now, central banks are still buying gold. Even at these record prices, they are still buying gold. And if the monetary authorities of sovereign nations, people that are much smarter than me, if they're doing it, I mean, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for me. Now, the silver market's a little bit more cut and dry. The silver market, it is a much small, like way smaller market than gold, okay? And it's driven mostly by industrial demand and retail. Now, I would say it's mostly industrial demand because we're living in an age where silver is needed because it is the best conductor in the entire universe, okay? Copper is a damn good conductor too, but when you're talking about the precision level electronics that we have nowadays, you need to have the best of the best, and silver is the best conductor out there. So silver is in very high demand, and the manufacturers that require silver, they're stockpiling it. One thing that I've noticed is, even though gold and silver are slowly making the headlines now, I don't know or see that many people that are actually collecting or buying the physical. This kind of reminds me about the crypto market. And I've heard of cryptocurrency for 15 years now, but during the pandemic is only when, you had everybody, like, when they say the shoe shine boy starts giving you like stock tips. So I remember I had a guy come in to fix my furnace, and he was talking to me about Ethereum and Bitcoin and all of these altcoins. And I asked him, like, I was fairly new to crypto. So I asked him, like, hey, what exactly is this stuff? What does it mean? And he had no idea. He just bought it, right? And when I would go to work, a lot of people there would be talking about, crypto.com and FTX and all these exchanges and all these things. And they were actively buying and trading these various cryptocurrencies. Now, even though with gold and silver making headlines now, I'm not seeing the general public buying gold and silver. I'm seeing a slight increase, but when I talk to the guys at work, when I talk to my friends and family, a lot of them just don't buy the gold and silver. They just don't physically have it. They don't even have the ETFs, which I find is kind of interesting, which leads me to believe that we are still early, because even though it's making the headlines, for some reason, unlike with crypto, I don't know why the general public has not kind of flocked to go and buy gold and silver. I mean, I do notice that on Costco, they're sold out. TD Precious Metals is sold out. And I've seen a couple headlines in the East where, in my opinion, gold and silver is a lot more meaningful, that certain places are sold out. In fact, there's a huge premium difference in the Shanghai physical gold exchange, where silver ounces are selling for $20 to $30 more than what the spot price is. But here in the West, I'm not seeing that, which is why I believe that we are still pretty early in this precious metals bull market. And I mean, guys, with all this being said, at the end of the day, like, I just think the simplest answer is probably the best. Gold and silver, they have extremely strong fundamentals. And I hate to be a doom and gloomer, but when you take a look at what's going on in the world right now, I mean, it just kind of seems like everything's, falling apart. I mean, like, really, in your heart's heart, if you believe that the world is going to get better within the next 2 years, I'm going to, again, not to be a pessimist, but I'm going to say it's probably not. I don't think that the situation in Gaza is going to improve. I don't think that the war in Ukraine is going to be solved amicably. I don't think that the Chinese are going to have their eyes off of Taiwan and that's going to be solved. I don't think this Venezuela fiasco is going to resolve in a way that's going to be good. Because I mean, it's still a messy situation down there, and we're gearing up for another Iran conflict, which, I mean, given the crisis that's going on in Iran right now, as Bill Clinton once said, you never waste a good crisis. And I'm sure that when Iran is as weak as they are now, with their country in full-blown crisis mode, I'm sure that the Israelis and the Americans are going to want to go in there and do what they feel is best. So essentially, like, I don't foresee the global climate geopolitically to improve within the next 2 years. Which is why I just think that the prices of these precious metals are just going to go up and up and up. And yeah, this is just pretty much my little rant about why I think it's not too late to get into gold and silver, why I think you should get into the physical stuff, not the ETFs, buy the physical stuff. And there's videos that I've created on how you can do that. And if you guys found this content and my rant informative, if you like what you hear, if you don't like what you hear, please comment. I'm always open for feedback, and I would like to make my videos better for you guys. And yeah, that's pretty much it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and stay safe out there. Take care.